Due to the nature of the game, old school RuneScape ends up being a second monitor game a lot of the time for a lot of people. Every skill has the option of high intensity methods that give you more XP per hour, or lower intensity methods for less XP. And most players choose the lower intensity methods, which is no surprise because as the player base ages, a lot of people don't have the same energy to play the game anymore. Whether it's due to work, family, schooling, a lot of people come home and want to unwind after a long day, and while some people do find it meditative to do click-intensive tick manipulation methods, the majority of players would prefer to AFK while focusing most of their attention on other things like YouTube, Netflix, live streams, Reddit, and so on. The term AFK, or away from keyboard, can be subjective, and I've seen a lot of arguments over the years as to what counts as AFK. I think it's pedantic to say that if you can't leave your keyboard for 5 minutes at a time, then it's not AFK. I don't think AFKing literally means you need to go away from your keyboard, but if you're going to be pedantic about it, well, technically you can click on an agility obstacle, stand up and face away from your keyboard for 5 seconds, then come back in time to click the next agility obstacle. But people wouldn't call rooftop agility AFK. So I think there's a flaw in that logic that going away from your keyboard means that it's AFK. Really, AFK colloquially means low intensity or low effort or minimal thought required. Going by that definition though, I guess that kind of would make rooftop agility mean that it's AFK then. Anyways, all that to say as a disclaimer that not every plugin I show in this video is going to help you in your 10-minute at a time AFK endeavors. Every skill has interval-based clicking of some form or another, and these plugins at the very least will help you not have to pay as much attention when doing low attention methods in the game. And with all that said, I've got 15 Runelite plugins to show you, so let's start with the first plugin on the list, the NPC Aggression Timer, which actually will help you AFK 10 minutes at a time. When you're training Slayer, a lot of monsters will be aggressive to you, so you can stand around in your tank gear or your proselyte praying, but after 10 minutes, monsters become unaggressive. And not only does this plugin have a built-in 10-minute timer to show you how much time before they de-aggro, but it also shows you where to move to reset the aggro. You have to cross over any of the yellow lines, and that'll reset the 10-minute timer, and you're good to go for another 10 minutes. Outside of Slayer, you may also find this useful at Ammonite or Sand Crabs, because when the timer runs out, they don't even change out of their rock form, much less aggro you. And by knowing the exact tile you need to run to, it'll save you a bit of time so you can get back to your other monitor sooner. Before we continue on, I want to mention that a lot of these plugins are going to be default plugins, meaning they come pre-installed with Runelite. But some of the plugins I talk about, you'll have to install yourself, which is very simple to do. You're going to go to the configuration icon and go to the third tab. This is the plugin hub, and this is how you install plugins. There is a warning here that looks kind of scary. It says use at your own risk. But you're not going to be breaking any of the rules of the game. Every plugin that gets put in the plugin hub is confirmed to not be rule breaking. The warning is here simply to let you know that it could cause bugs or instability in the client, like it could make it crash or something. It is extremely rare that any plugins in the plugin hub will cause any issues for you. And all the plugins I'm going to be talking about in this video, I've never had an issue with. So if I talk about a plugin in the video and you don't see it on the list here, then now you know where to find it. Number 2 on the list is going to be the idle Notifier plugin, and this notifies you when you're idle. There's a lot of settings you can mess around with. I think the most important one would be the idle interaction notification, so that you get a notification when you're idle from, well, interacting with stuff like combat or fishing. And there's other things too, like if your hit points drops below a certain threshold, if your prayer drops below, energy, and so on. And after you have all these set up, we're going to go to another plugin. This one is called Runelite, the Runelite plugin. And we're going to go down to notification settings. These two plugins work in tandem. You have to have both of them on or else this whole thing's not going to work. And there's even more settings in here. Notification sound if you want that, timeout. I set all these options up so long ago I don't exactly remember what everything does, but if you want you can copy my numbers and options and tweak it from there. You've probably seen a lot of YouTubers with the flashing idle screen. This is how you do it. This option right here, flash. You can have it flash or be solid for 2 seconds or until canceled. Canceled means that if you're on a different window, here I'll just chop a tree right here so you can see. I don't have Runelite selected right now, it's going to turn red. And once I move the mouse over and click, now it's not red anymore. Here, I'll enable tray notifications so you can see what that looks like. I have the Runelite in my bottom right corner of the screen right now. So now we got the red flash and the notification. Number 3 is going to be picture in picture. This one is so cool. There's a lot of options in here you could adjust. It's all very self-explanatory once you start messing with it. I gotta show you full screen how this works. So when I click out of the client, there's now a picture in picture window. And when I click back on the client, it disappears again. You could hold down shift to drag it around wherever you want. When you click on the client and click off again, it'll remember the location that you moved it to. You could resize it as well. There's some preset sizes, so I can make it smaller if I want it to be smaller, bigger if I want it to be bigger. You can change the left click and the shift click to do what you want it to do. If you want to request focus, that means when you click on it, left click in this case, it'll put the focus back on the client, or you can make it so that left click does nothing. I moved Runelite back over to the other monitor, and now on this main monitor, I'm browsing YouTube or Reddit or Netflix or whatever. I like having the left click for this thing being set to drag, so if it's in the way of whatever I'm trying to look at, I can easily move it around. And this works really well in tandem with the idle notifier plugin, because it makes it very obvious when it turns red and it's time to click on the tree again. And I can just get back to browsing whatever I'm looking at. Next, we have the Logout Timer plugin. By default, as most of you know, you have 5 minutes before the game automatically logs you out if you don't click on the client or interact in any way. But with the Logout Timer, I don't know what kind of magic Runelite is working, but it's somehow possible to set it up to 25 minutes at the max. Or if you want it to be a bit shorter, you can have it be shorter. I never tried, can you make it below 5 minutes if I push it down? Oh, okay, no, so it has to be between 5 and 25 minutes. I always keep it at the highest at 25. It's nice to have for certain collection log things, like if you're doing Castle Wars or Trouble Brewing or some AFK combat stuff like crabs, Nightmare Zone, splashing, which means every time you leave your computer to do things that most RuneScape players don't do for extended periods of time, like shower or go outside, you can be confident you won't get logged out if you're trying to AFK a whole game of Castle Wars. Number 5, item drop sound. This will give you a sound anytime you receive a drop of any item that you specify, but you have to enter the item ID. You can't just enter the name of the item. I googled OSRS item IDs, and the first result that popped up was this one OSRS box. Let's do an example here. I'm going to search for bones because that's going to be a guaranteed drop. Okay, normal bones is ID 526. By default, the plugin already comes with one ID already entered in there, even if you try to reset it just to show you. That is blood shard. The plugin really wants you to know when you get a blood shard, but to add more in, you put a semicolon, and then in this case 526 for the bones. And this mugger, when I attack him, he's going to drop guaranteed bones. So let's hear what that sounds like. I don't know if I've ever had 2 stray dogs following me at the same time. I didn't know that was possible. You can go into the plugin hub on the Runelite website, and there's more detailed instructions for each of the plugins. This one, there is a way to change the sound, so if you want to do that, here's how you do it. Number 6, object markers. This lets you shift, right click any object in the game and mark it. And you can see you could highlight different things if you want the whole or the outline or the click box or the tile, or all of them at the same time. You could choose different colors, you can have it filled if you want, you could change the border width. There's so many use cases with object markers. I mean, really, you can use it for every skill in the game, every activity, raid, minigame, you can use the object markers for. And I'll go through a few examples here real quick. So for smithing, for example, you could mark the anvil and mark the bank too while you're at it. A fun use for thieving is if you mark a stall while it has items in it and then you thieve from it, it's like a different object ID for the empty one, so it won't be highlighted anymore. And when you're looking at it out of your peripherals and you see it's yellow again, you see the big yellow outline, then you know to click it. Object markers are nice for runecrafting, really nice for any runecraft altar. I'm just showing Arenia specifically in this case. I can figure out where to click, but it's extra effort, and why put in extra effort when you don't have to? So if I mark it, now there's a little yellow box where I know to click every time, and you could click to craft the runes all the way from the bank. I know some people are going to ask how I was able to click all the way from the bank. With the camera plugin, expand your outer zoom limit, and for the GPU plugin, I think it's the draw distance needs to be really high up there. For minigames, take Trouble Brewing for example, you can mark the same 3 objects that you're going to be clicking on every single game. A lot of people make fun of it, saying like, obviously I can see where the anvil is, why would I highlight it? When RuneScape is on your second monitor, the goal is kind of to be able to put as little attention on the game as possible. Highlighting objects can save a split second for every trip or every tree or every rock as you orientate the mouse where to click, because your brain will register the location quicker since you'll be seeing the highlight out of your peripherals, which means not only will you be saving time, but you won't have to put as much thought into the game, and you can keep your brain focused on your main monitor, and you'll be that much less likely to get distracted. I know this plugin by itself may not be super game changing, but it's one small thing out of many that provides tiny quality of life benefits. Number 7 is NPC Indicators. This one is similar to object markers, except instead of objects, you highlight NPCs, which means you'll be using this more for combat related things and not so much for skilling. Although for skilling there are still uses, like for bankers or certain NPCs in skilling minigames. You do shift, right click, and generally you'll want to do tag all, but sometimes you'll only want to tag one specific of a thing. Like in Puro Puro you would tag a specific eclectic impling spawn that you're going for, but generally it's going to be tag all. The way this helps you AFK is very similar to the peripherals thing that I was saying before. It'd be more important to use it for monsters that aren't aggressive to you. That's why I'm showing Abbey Demons here, they're not aggressive. Because if they were aggressive to you, then you'd be relying more on the NPC Aggression Timer. It wouldn't really matter so much if you have them highlighted. Or maybe if you're getting Zammy God Wars KC, or you're camping at Skeletal Wyverns for a while, or for champion scroll monsters that aren't aggressive, and you're like me and ran out of cannonballs going for one champion scroll that you still don't have yet. You could use it for any Slayer task that you have, although you don't really need to, because in the Slayer plugin, there's an option to highlight whatever your current task is. So if you're using this option on the Slayer plugin, then you wouldn't really need to use the NPC indicators unless you're off task. A lot of options on how you could choose the highlights to look. I would highly recommend using the true tile. It's very useful for a lot of PVM. And it also shows the whole list of NPCs you have highlighted, so you can add or remove them from anywhere in the game. After you already tag an NPC, you can shift right click it again if you want it to be a different color or a different style from the default for this specific NPC. This part's not related to AFKing, but for the minions at God Wars, you could tag each of them individually a different color based on their respective combat style. For number 8, we have another indicators plugin. This one is player indicators. This gives you multiple ways and options to know where players are, or indicate where players are. You could choose who you want to be shown, so you could have your own player enabled and you could have others. I only have it enabled for PvP, so only in the wildy it's gonna show where players are, but we can enable this for others everywhere. And you could change the color if you want. I have it set to red. And you could choose different colors for different types of people, like if it's your friend or people in your friends chat or people in your clan chat. And then you choose how they're shown. You could choose if you want people to have tiles under them, if they have their name showing somewhere where you want their name to be shown, if you want their names to be on the minimap, colorized player menu, so when you right click, their names will be whatever color you picked for them versus the regular, it's white normally. And you may be wondering, how is this relevant or useful for AFKing? When someone logs in under you at Redwoods and you want your own spot, because even though it is a timer now for trees, they might start chopping the tree next to you a couple minutes before you get to it, and now you have less AFK time. So with NPC indicators, you could see right away that someone logged in under you and it's time for you to move to a new spot, because they usually do not from my experience. Because while other people may not care, now I feel like I'm pressured to click the next tree spot as soon as possible when this one despawns. Otherwise the other person gets to it first and then it's less AFK time overall, and that's the whole point of being at Redwoods, is to AFK and not have to pay attention. A real better use case for it though would be in the wildy. I know like you're not supposed to AFK in the wildy, but again, this isn't about completely being AFK, it's more so when you're doing activities that don't require as much attention. Especially on the minimap, it's really nice when you see the red appear, you know it's time to go. I set the player indicators back to PvP only, and you can see when I enter the wildy, there's all the names again. But I want to show off another one that I think works well in tandem with the player indicators, especially if we're doing wildy stuff, which is the Wilderness Player Alarm. I'm going to just combine these two together because they're pretty similar with their use cases. With the Wildy Player Alarm, you turn that on, and when there's anyone that you could see at all, you get the flashing color of whatever color that you choose it to be. You want to set the radius to the maximum amount, which in this case is 30. So if anyone appears within 30 tiles of you, then the alarm is going to start flashing, and once we get closer to Ferox, even though they're not in the wildy, they're technically outside the wildy, but it doesn't matter. As long as you're in the wildy, the game will register seeing anyone else at all appear. When I was doing the wildy bosses on this account, I would have my main scouting outside with the wildy player alarm. So whenever a player would log in, I would see below in my peripherals that my other screen would start flashing, and I know that it'd be time for me to teleport out. Not that that's an AFK thing, but when I say like low attention things in the wildy, I'm mostly referring to wildy slayer. But you know, when someone logs in, I think there's like a second or two where you can't do anything because everything's loading. So if you're at the wildy altar training prayer, for example, you see your screen start flashing, you're already hovered over the logout. You'll have like an extra split second, even though you may have the NPC indicators on to see the red text appear. I think the flashing will really solidify to you that you need to log out, so it might save you a very split second. That could make a difference. Number 9, the tree despawn timer, and you may have already noticed me using this a couple times throughout the video. When you start chopping the tree, there is a despawn timer, and with this timer you can choose if you want to show ticks or change it to seconds, or if you like the pie look to it. And there's this option, popular tree indicator. When there's 10 plus people chopping a tree, you get the maximum bonus or invisible woodcutting boost from forestry. So that's the tree you'd want to click on. When you log into a world or you enter a new area with the tree despawn timer on, it doesn't know how long a tree has already been chopped. So it's kind of like it only registers locally. So your character had to have seen when the tree first started being chopped. This tree is about to respawn, and notice without me even clicking on this one, the tree despawn timer is going to know when someone clicks on it for the first time and starts chopping it, and the timer will start when the first person starts going. There it is, and the timer should get bigger once 10 people start chopping it. So let's give it a few seconds for more people to move over here. Okay, see, yeah, now it's bigger. And the less time there is on a tree, the colors will change, and you could choose what you want the colors to look like. This plugin may not seem like it really helps with AFK, because with the idle notifier plugin, you get the flashing screen when your character goes idle. But if you're about to run downstairs or go to the bathroom and you don't have this plugin, you don't know how much time is left on the tree. So what if I left right now to go to the bathroom and there's 5 seconds left on the tree? Well, with this plugin, I know that I should be chopping this tree instead to get the most amount of gains during the time I'm away from the computer. This is kind of a bad example because there's not that many people on this world, so no one's even chopping this tree over here. But a lot of the time when you're in a forestry world, then there's going to be people chopping all the trees, and you're probably not going to be paying attention to know when the trees first started being chopped and when they respawn, because that's the whole point. You're trying to AFK. This is the perfect transition into the next plugin, Entity Hider. This allows you to hide whatever you want to hide. So we can hide other players. And when we enable it, you'll see all the other players are gone. You could hide other players' pets as well if you don't want any to show. You could hide random events, so random events won't show. Although I think this hides your own random events as well. You probably don't want to hide local player. There is a plugin that's a bit more specific called Random Event Hider, and we could turn this on. Oh, this is perfect. There's a random event right here. Oh, wait, this is interesting because I have random events hidden, but it's not hiding the strange plant. Wait, it wasn't ready. In the random event hider plugin, there is an option to hide all strange plants. So you can not use the hide random events option in the entity hider plugin and instead come into this plugin and choose exactly what you do and don't want to see of your own versus other people's random events. I'm sure you could tell why hiding random events would be nice for AFKing, because you don't get distracted by everyone else's random events and you're not trying to click onto every single count check that you see or every single genie that you see. You'll know which one is yours. There's also a lot going on at certain minigames like Winter Toad and Temperos and Guardians of the Rift. In some cases, it can even be laggy. Like I know Guardians of the Rift can get really laggy if you don't use Entity Hider. Really, like any AFK skilling activity where there's a lot of people around, it's nice to be able to see where you are and when you get bird's nest drops on the ground, because when there's a bunch of people around, it could be very easy to miss that. Next, we have the Cannon plugin. The Cannon is a staple of AFK Slayer, at least if you're a main account. If you're an Iron Man, it's a bit iffy, but that's a different story for a different time. So if you're already AFKing when you're using a cannon, then it would make sense to have a lot of cannon related notifications and warnings, and you'll have them with this plugin. There's a little info box to show you how many cannonballs you have left. You can customize the notification that you get for whatever you want it to be like when you get to whatever threshold of cannonballs that you set the warning to. Number 12 is the World Hopper plugin. This allows you to use hotkeys to hop worlds instead of having to go into this menu and do the thumbs up every time, of course, because we all love playing RuneScape and having to manually click on the next world you want to hop to. By default, it's Control, Shift, and arrow key to hop to a different world, but you can change those hotkeys to whatever you want. So let's change hop to previous world to be left arrow key and hop next world to be right arrow key. Now all I'm going to do is press the arrow key, and now it's hopping worlds. You can see in here that there's a lot of different filters and things you could set, like different types of worlds. You want to ignore dangerous worlds. Yeah, lots of different things you can mess around with in here. Places where you hop worlds a lot, and keep in mind that a lot of things I say is coming from an Iron Man perspective, but like Superglass Make It charter ships is the first thing that comes to mind. Or thieving gem stalls, or anything where you're buying out the shop stock, like gold ore at the blast furnace, or gems and more ore rack. Or maybe you're hopping worlds to try and mine Runelite ore. I don't know, there's a lot of situations you'd be hopping worlds, and this will make it slightly less attention required. Oh, or even to quickly hop when you see a PKer in the wildy. Lucky number 13, we have the Time Tracking plugin. In the Time Tracking plugin, it keeps track of how long is left until, well, a lot of things. Birdhouses, herbs, trees, really everything related to farming and birdhouses too. Taking a look at birdhouses, for example, you can do a run every 50 minutes. That's how long it takes for it to get filled up with birds. And if you subscribe and click the bell for notifications, you can be notified when the birdhouses are ready to go. And in the plugin settings itself, you can adjust the notifications to be a bit more specific how you want them to be. I know doing farm runs and birdhouse runs aren't really like an AFK thing in itself. It is a passive thing that you want to do, especially as an Iron Man. So I'm going to lump it in with AFK things because you're going to have to do them eventually. It's better to passively get your herbs and bird's nests on the way to maxing all your other skills rather than waiting till the end to grind out master farmers and farming contracts and aberrant specters or whatever to rush to get herbs. Number 14, this one is a huge one. This is the inventory setups plugin. There's not too much to adjust in the plugin settings itself. The main thing you'd want to make sure that you have here is default filter bank checkmarked. And this plugin is an option on the sidebar, and like the name of the plugin implies, these are your inventory setups. I have a lot of them, as you can see, every time I do a new boss or every single Slayer task I do, all kinds of different activities. I always make an inventory setup for it. And there's even like multiple of them. Like if I type blood veld, you could see I have multiple different ones I've made. And it's like this for pretty much every single thing I make a lot. Let's say I want to go to Zora. I'm gonna type Zora in here because I have all my Zora setups labeled as Zora, and I can click the eyeball and you can view your setup that way and see all the things that you have selected. You could write notes in here too, all the notes will save. Now, here's what's even better about it. Remember before I said that you want to check mark the thing that enables the bank filtering. So every time you make a setup, this is going to be checked by default. If it's not, it's no big deal. You just want to, it won't be highlighted, so you want to make sure you highlight that. And when you open up your bank and then click view, it's going to show you all the items that you have for your setup. But we'll take it even a step further with bank tag layouts. The inventory setups plugin plus bank tag layouts is perfect. This is what you need to get both of these. It's so good. Now it has like its own little separate interface kind of thing. You can drag the items around. There's an auto sort feature. You can preview, delete that. You can add duplicates or remove duplicates of certain things, move things around in here. And it's not going to affect the order of anything you have in your bank. This is a separate, well, layout, bank tag layout. And same thing with the little bars on the side here. If you have like quick things you use a lot, I probably should make one for Karab ones because I do that a lot. You can add a new tag tab and label it whatever you want to be, and you could drag items into here and now they're going to show up there, or you could delete it if you didn't want that. Now I want to show you how to actually make an inventory setup. You can probably see based on the gear and my inventory, it's going to be like a farm run kind of thing. So we're going to click the plus in the inventory setups, add new setup, I'll label it farming. Press OK. Now we can type farming, and there it is. And when I open the setup in the bank with the bank tag layouts, this is what I see. So like I said, you could drag stuff around. Probably want to remove, there's some duplicates of the teaks, so we'll remove those. I don't know why the bank note is there. Maybe like, you know, every single day you're going to be harvesting the calquats and the papayas, and you're going to need that and that every day, but not every day you're going to use the teaks. So maybe you'll put these off to the side. I feel like I'm barely scratching the surface here. I mean, there's so much you could do with this plugin. I just wanted to show you how to do the basics, but if you want, of course, you could fiddle around and really get more in depth with all this stuff. Now, while the plugin itself isn't necessarily a thing that helps with AFKing, it minimizes your time in between doing your activities. Like, especially if you're doing Slayer, you're constantly hopping between Slayer tasks like once or twice per hour. So if before you were going by memory and it took you, say, 2 minutes to gear up for a Slayer task, once you start using this plugin, maybe after a few days that you get used to it, probably take you like 15 seconds to gear up for every single activity. I mean, that's about how long it takes me. Plus, it's a lot harder to forget items if you're using the plugin versus if you're going off memory. Probably a lot of times you'd forget to bring a rock hammer or maybe alk runes or bones to peaches or stuff like that. And then you have to waste even more time going back to the bank. Here, and if you think I'm exaggerating when I say 15 seconds to gear up, well, let's do a little test here. Here, you can start timing me now. Okay, time. All geared up for my Blood-Veld Venerable task. I think the best way to put it is that while this isn't an AFK plugin itself, it helps you get back to AFKing sooner. And the final one on this list is Menu Entry Swapper. And while this video wasn't meant to be in any particular order, this one that I saved for last, I would say, is the most important one. And if Runelite was going to go away forever and you could only save one plugin, Menu Entry Swapper would be the one that I would choose to keep. What this plugin does is it lets you choose what you want for the left click option and the shift click option for really like everything in the game. There's an incomprehensible amount of things you can do with this plugin. There's all these options on here, like if you want left click for bury the bones versus use, if you don't want to accidentally bury them. You change the left click on the Desert Amulet to teleport you to a certain place, or the Karamja Gloves teleport, or the Mauritania Legs, or the Rada's Blessing. You can switch the left click on the Construction Cape to be tele to the POH. Teleport items like the Glory, Explorer's Ring Chronicle, you can swap the options to be teleport with those. Teleport submenus, check this out. So when you right click on the Max Cape, here's what we have. Let's turn on the submenus. Now you have all these options you could choose with the Max Cape, or with the Diary Cape, you could choose the teleport, or the Construction Cape, you could choose right away which one to go to, because previously you'd have to go through this menu, but now you don't. So now you can swap the left click on the Diary Cape to be these teleports instead of previously the left click would be this teleport menu. Anyways, I think you get the point. Like, you could switch left click with everything in the game. Did you know that by default bankers are a talk to option for the left click? I think this plugin, I believe, is default, and I think bank is selected by default. So if I were to turn this plugin off, see, the left click on a banker is talk to. Other cool things you could do with the plugin, when you have stuff equipped, you can swap the left click or the shift click to be something different only while it's equipped. For the Construction Cape, for example, I'll make the left click be tele to POH. When it's equipped, I can left click, it'll teleport me instead of unequipping, which can be kind of annoying sometimes. If you forget you have that, you'd have to right click to remove it. And you can see my inventory, the left click is not teleport. This option is strictly for when it's equipped. And then you could reset it back to default and remove it. You can also set custom left click or shift click options when you're in a bank interface. So every time you have the bank open, if you have, say, the Construction Cape in your inventory, if you always want it to be equipped when you left click, you can set it to where. So I'll left click and it is worn now. I did not deposit it into the bank. You can check right there. Another thing is when you're withdrawing things from the bank, you can make the left click be withdraw all. Like I have that for Karambwanji, because every time I'm going to withdraw them, I'm never going to withdraw 1, I'm never going to withdraw 10, I'm never going to withdraw X. I'm always going to want to withdraw all of them. You do the same thing for deposit as well. Make the left click be deposit all. So you probably should do that for the rune arrows as well, because every time I withdraw them, I'm going to be withdrawing all. So I could save a right click every time I go to do my Blood-Veld Venator task. Oh, I could make the left click be deposit all as well. One more very important thing that I can't not show you is that with Menu Entry Swapper, you can do left click construction. So by default, I've already changed this. If we reset though with the left click is just walk here, but we can swap the left click to be build. You can do left click, build, and then swap the left click for remove. So we got left click build, left click remove for 1, for 1. We are truly living in the future. I don't know, it's kind of like very, very overwhelming how much you can really do with that plugin. I feel like I could almost make it into its own video, like going down the skills one by one, showing all the different ways you can utilize Menu Entry Swapper for each skill. And even then, that might be like too much for one video. I don't know. I think the best way to summarize how you can utilize that plugin just generally would be every time you're doing a skilling method, just think about everything you deposit and withdraw from the bank, and every NPC you click on, and really every click that you do with that method. Especially think about all the right clicks that you do, because there could be a decent chance that you can make that right click left click into a left click. That is the end of the list of the 15 plugins that I wanted to show for this video. It kind of ended up being more than 15 plugins, which I think is better than it being less than 15 plugins. But I do want to take a bit to talk about general advice to make every activity you do slightly more AFK and slightly less attention required. And that would be by going into the plugin hub and searching for whatever activity you're doing. I mean, if you're doing like Guardians of the Rift, for example, you could just type GOTR and you get a bunch of plugins. Or for general runecrafting stuff, you could just type in the name of the skill that you're doing, type in runecraft, and there's a whole bunch of runecraft plugins. Oh, the very important one right here, runecrafting utilities. definitely get that one if you don't have it. Or like we could type in thieving here, for example. There's a lot of different thieving activities in the game. There's the houses in Varlamore, ham storerooms, master farmers, a timer for the chest with the nature rune in it. Oh, this is a cool one. Prevents pickpocketing when you're below a specified HP threshold. So if you're a hardcore Iron Man, that's probably a very important one. If you type smithing, you get like easy blast furnace, easy giant's foundry. Highly recommend those. But yeah, you probably get the gist. You could type in any skill that you're doing. Here's fishing, and you get a bunch of fishing plugins. So whatever you're doing in the game, search in here. And because Runelite has been around for so long now, most things have been thought of, and if something is allowed to be done, there's a good chance that it has been done. Okay, so does anyone have any questions? Okay, that is going to wrap it up for this video. I really hope it helped, and my goal is that you learned at least one new thing, or that I kept you entertained. I'll take either. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.